Good morning and welcome to Sports Beat Live, the Kansas City Stars weekly chat with on all things Chiefs. I'm Blair Kerkhoff, your host. We're going to come to you every Thursday when the Chiefs play on a Sunday. But in 2 of the first 3 weeks and 3 of the first 6, the Chiefs don't play on a Sunday, right? They opened up on Thursday night. And they play the following week on Monday night in Baltimore. They got a game against the Bills on a Thursday night. So we'll let you know. We'll let you know throughout the, after at the end of the show, programming notes when we're coming at you. So instead of bringing in these guys one at a time, we switched it up this week, and and they joined us all at once. So let's say good morning to Sam McDowell.
What's going on, buddy?
Hey, Herbie Teope.
Peace.
Vahe Gregorian is here. And I must say, a showered, teeth brushed, cleansed Sam Mellinger is here today. Hi, Sam. What's up, guys? All right. So again, we're going to talk Chiefs. We want you to talk Chiefs with us. Send us questions and comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can, and we got a lot of topics to cover today. Chiefs offense, playing in a stadium, an empty stadium this week at the LA Chargers. What the injury update on Charvarius Ward, and as we do every week, that's probably a good place to start. We do have an injury report. By the time we come to you on Thursday mornings, we have one injury report. We get another one on Thursday and another on Friday when the Chiefs play on Sunday. So, as we tend to do, let's go to Herbie and talk to him about injuries. And I know there were 3 who didn't practice on Wednesday, Herbie. But what's the update on those guys?
Well, Charvarius Ward is obviously the big one, Mellinger's guy. But Andy Reid said earlier in the week they wanted to see how he did during practice. He fractured his hand in the season opener, ended up playing, I believe, 31 snaps. If he's not able to go, then you're probably going to see Rashad Fenton and Antonio Hamilton and LeJarris Sneed, who looked very good in the season opener. Those are probably going to be your 3 core cornerbacks. They're going to take a wait-and-see approach with him, see how he can do, and then probably won't get a clearer picture on his status until Friday. Colin Saunders, dislocated elbow. There's a report from the NFL Network that he is out for at least a month. We asked Andy Reid about that specific report and if that was accurate, and Reid, true to nature, kind of like punted on it and said, hey, we don't do timelines here. We don't talk about the injuries, timelines, etc. But if he's out for an extended period of time, and I think the Chiefs kind of played their hand there because they protected Braxton Hoyer on the practice squad, and he's a defensive tackle, and he's going to give them some depth there if Saunders can't play in week 2. And then lastly, the other big injury is Alex Okafor, who suffered a hamstring injury, recorded half a sack with Chris Jones in the season opener, and then walked off the field with a hamstring injury. And if he can't go, then, the Chiefs has some solid depth there at defensive end with Tano Passanio. Taco Charlton might even be called up because he was inactive last week. You've got Damone Harris, who was inactive in week 1. He's another guy who can play inside and outside. So you've got some pieces there you can move around if those 3 can't play.
Let's stick with that position for a second and bring in another name, and that's Mike. I don't know if it's Dana or Dana. I'm still trying to figure out the correct pronunciation of the Chiefs' 5th-round pick from Michigan. But this guy got 29 snaps in the opener, and whose pup is that? I want to know.
That'll be Vahe.
That's not Vahe.
I just muted myself for a second. Did that help you? Sorry. There was something incredible going on here. A door opened, so they went into a frenzy.
Yeah, and somehow our producer's doesn't pick that up. I want to see the pups, man. I want to let's go with the farm that is your office.
See if we can get them up here at the opportune moment.
Right. Okay, so Herbie, yeah, I thought one of the surprises a couple of surprises from just the personnel mixes on opening night was Dana playing as many snaps as he did. And there were a couple others, but he is absolutely involved in the mix, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think like Mellinger will actually agree with me on this as well. During training camp, we actually saw, I'm going to say Dana, because I remember Spag said Dana last week. So we got Dana, whatever. I'm going to say Dana.
It's that extra N that throws me off. You know?
We saw during training camp he was getting reps with the ones or as part of the rotation. So him playing a lot didn't surprise me. But I will say that I was actually surprised that Taco Charlton, another guy that the Chiefs were high on, and he cracked at 53. He was inactive. But they do have some moving pieces in there. Treshaun Wharton also played some snaps, but he's a guy who gives them flexibility to go inside and outside, which is big because Mike Pennell, this is his last week serving his 2-game suspension, so he's eligible to return to the roster after Monday night's game. But I think they have adequate depth there to cover it.
Okay. So that answers Brian LaBerge's question. He wanted to know with Saunders out and Okafor a little dinged, what are your thoughts on Wharton? Seemed to look pretty good. For a guy who played Division II football, he got a few defensive snaps and thought he was. I thought he was just fine. Look, we're going to talk a lot about the Chiefs' offense and the comments by Patrick Mahomes earlier this week, but I got to tell you, one of the big stories that came out of the win over the Texans was just how well the defense played and against Deshaun Watson. They went, I think it was 4 consecutive series holding the Texans without a score. I think they punted away 3 of them, and maybe one of them was the L'Jarius Sneed pick. But anyway, it was 4 straight in the middle of the game while the Chiefs went from a down 7 to up 31-7. And just to think of where this defense was at the beginning of last year as they were adjusting to new defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo to where it is at the beginning of this year. Just another reason to be optimistic about these Chiefs. Am I right?
No, I believe you're right. And I think the other key thing, too, is look at how they dominated the time of possession there. I mean, the score to me, when you look at the score, you're like, oh, that was a shootout, 34-20. Not really, because as you pointed out, they were up 31-7. And a lot of the points came in garbage time, as a lot of the fantasy football people love to say, garbage time production. But that's basically what it was. Tyrann Mathieu said that, hey, we were mad at, they were mad at themselves for actually giving up 20 points. And as you always hear players say, hey, there's room for improvement, but you have to be encouraged with what they were able to do defensively against Deshaun Watson and his weapons.
Yeah, Melly, that was your question, I think, to Tyrann afterwards. And I was kind of expecting, we had a good game and held a team that had run up some yards and points on them last year to fewer yards and points, but he was genuinely ticked off after the game.
Yeah, Tyrann's standards are closer to perfection than my expectations for football. And I get it, and that's how good players should feel and should talk. But I think more about the Texans having 7 points. Was it midway through the fourth quarter? It was into the fourth quarter. Yeah,
they scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth.
Yeah, more than I do giving up those 2 touchdowns late when the score's out of reach and you're down your top 2 corners. And again, I get where he's coming from, and that's a high standard or whatever. But I mean, this is the same guy that will tell you he dropped 10 interceptions or something last year, and a drop to him is when his hand is within 5 yards of the ball. So it's I was impressed though defensively. I think everybody was, but particularly up front. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they were pressuring Deshaun Watson all night long, and some of that, we always say the other team gets paid too when things don't go right. Maybe the other team shouldn't be paid as much to block for Watson as they are, but credit the Chiefs. I mean, especially Frank Clark. His explosion off the ball, I think, was better than what we've seen out of him last year. And honestly, a lot of the tape I watched when they made that trade, didn't have that kind of explosion that he showed on Thursday. And it wasn't just him. And it's easy to forget now. I mean, they had last year a ton of depth up front of guys getting after the quarterback. That's one of their philosophies on building that defense. And then they all got hurt. They had a bunch of guys get hurt, and maybe this is what it looks like when they're healthy. But they were they were at Watson all night long.
I thought Passanio was one of the players who really took advantage at the end of last season of the injuries to Okafor and Agba. And he started the Super Bowl when he started the opener, and I think he's their starting defensive end. So I'll tell you, Vahe, just the tandem of Frank Clark and Chris Jones. You've got two of the best at their positions. I think at the NFL, and when we give all due credit to Tyrann Mathieu for his play, and maybe he drops an interception occasionally. He created the interception, the L'Jarius Sneed interception, with his pressure on Deshaun Watson on Tuesday. But Chiefs seem pretty stout up front now, and are only going to get better when Mike Pennell returns and Colin Saunders returns. It's defense looking pretty good compared to kind of a continuation of what we saw at the end of last season.
Yeah, and just sort of tying together what you just said, Blair, with something Sam just said. I mean, if you look at how that season started last year, they were just not starting from scratch, but so much different personnel, different scheme, different coach, and then you introduce, among others, really dynamic new players like Tyrann and Frank Clark. So with all that going, it was just going to take a while. But the thing that stands out that really ties us all together is the sort of the story Sam McDowell unearthed in Mexico City last year. I think is where, Sam, you got talking to Frank Clark about how hurt he'd been. I think if my memory serves right, that's the case. And you can see that a Frank Clark that's healthy and seems to not only be healthy but better than he might have been before he came to the Chiefs. Wow. So you do have a defense that's at the same standard or maybe on trajectory to be better than last year early on this season anyway. I mean, there's a lot of football to be played, but you can see the pieces and you can see how they go together.
Sam McDowell's excavation ability is not to be underestimated when it comes to unearthing these stories. Sam, another story. I don't think you unearthed this one, but you wrote about it. You and Melly both wrote about it this week, and we're going to switch gears and switch sides of the ball. And I don't know. I guess we realized it as the game was unfolding and in the weekend afterwards. But it really was brought home by Patrick Mahomes himself Wednesday when we talked to him, and that is, this offense, which has been defined by Mahomes's escapability, his strong arm, all the things that wow fans and have knocked certain members of the media out of their seats in a press box. Chiefs don't have to have that for their offense to be effective, and Mahomes talked a lot about that yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't see any of the Patrick Mahomes that I think makes all the highlight reel plays, any of the plays that we talk about on this show constantly and that fans talk about. We didn't see any of that Patrick Mahomes on Thursday, but it was kind of by design. It was the way the Texans were playing them, and I think they're going to see a lot of this sort of cover two defense where the safeties are deep. They try and take away Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman's speed and make the Chiefs beat them underneath. And Patrick Mahomes worked a lot of the offseason on trying to beat them underneath. That's exactly what they did. They got rid of the ball more quickly than any other team, but the ball only traveled. This is the next gen stat. The ball only traveled 3.2 yards in the air on his average completion downfield. And that is the lowest of all 32 quarterbacks in the NFL this week. So that's not a Patrick Mahomes-like stat. He usually averages about 6.5 over the past couple of years, so half of what he usually gets. But it was a strategy that worked. And so that's why, even though the stats might not have been there, he said he had his backup quarterback tell him after the game it was one of the best games he'd ever played.
Yeah, Chad Henny and Matt Moore both, according to Patrick Mahomes, said, the best game. And look, he had a good quarterback rating, one of his, I think, top 10 or top 11 QB ratings, his 211 yards. I think I counted fifth fewest for Mahomes in a game, and that includes the game at Denver last year where he got knocked out early in the second quarter. So from just from a yardage production standpoint, one of his lowest games, and yet his QB rating was really high, his effectiveness. He threw 3 touchdown passes. But Melly, what do you think? That's I don't know. That to me is the story of the week for the Chiefs, is their offense and how effective it can be with Mahomes not unleashing the way we've seen him do it.
Yeah, look, there's few sports that we follow that promote overreaction as much as the NFL, right? It's just one game, but I do wonder if this is not that every game's going to be like it was last Thursday, but just if we're going to see more of this than we did in 2018, I don't know that he's ever going to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns again, and I think Steve Spagnuolo would tell you he hopes not, because some of that was that the Chiefs were chasing points a lot that season. And I think I've ever since Thursday night, ever since that game was over, I just kept thinking like this offense is better. And it's better for a lot of reasons. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is obvious, but the blocking on Thursday was, maybe this is recency bias, but that's as good as I can remember the blocking being, since Mahomes started, became QB1. And if the defense can hold up, they don't have to do as well as they did Thursday. But if the defense can be top half of the league, then you're not going to see Mahomes have to go downfield. He still can. And I'm sure there will be moments where he does. And, they were a DeMarcus Robinson, actually two DeMarcus Robinson catches that could have been made away from, two really big highlight plays. The long one toward the back of the end zone. And then that one, it's like 5 or 6 yards, right? Where it was one of those where Mahomes is going left and kind of twists his body and throws right. That was an unreal play that few people get. But I wonder if what we're going to see now is more of, Aaron Rodgers in the last 10 seasons, I actually had it up just a second ago. Since 2011, he has thrown no more than 8 and as few as 2 interceptions in his full seasons over that period. That's 10 years. And I just wonder if we're going to see, and obviously Rodgers has highlight plays too, right? I mean, he's throwing a lot of touchdowns on a lot of yards. I just wonder if that's more the stat profile we're going to see now from him going forward, because, if the risk reward balance used to be a lot different. Like, I'm going to throw to Tyreek Hill downfield, even if it's a 40% play. And now I wonder if it needs to be like a 60% play, because you've got Edwards-Helaire, you've got, a little bit more certainty that you can get smaller chunks when you need them. But I'm curious to see how that plays out over time.
So to me, Blair, that's half of it, but the other half is this is a necessity. They had to figure out a way to beat coverages that they're going to see throughout the season, and that's the cover 2. They had to figure out, if teams take away our biggest advantage, which is our speed, what's the second option? And this is it. They don't, we saw games against the Colts, and I can't think of the second one, but there was the Colts specifically tried to do this to them last year and successfully did it. They ended that streak of them scoring 26 straight points. So the DeMarcus Robinson touchdown that he dropped was the only pass over 20 yards that Patrick Mahomes even attempted on Thursday night. Last year, he attempted at least 2 in every single game other than the Bears game in Week 16. One game against Oakland, he attempted 11 of them. And so I don't know whether that sort of stat is gone for this team. I don't think so, because I think teams might see what they're doing now and say, okay, now we've got to adjust to this, and then the deep ball comes back. I just think to me it's a necessity because of what you're going to see teams try and do against them this year.
It's a funny thing too, though. I mean, just to think, like, we're talking about how conservative it seemed, right? How they just sort of took what they got and they, scored 34 points. I mean, and I recognize that came in different ways, but if that's the book on beating the Chiefs, then I think the Chiefs are okay with it.
Right.
Right.
You play the right defensive strategy and you hold them to 34. Like, it's a weird thing when they're not trying to score quickly at all. Like when they're doing like what Herbie mentioned earlier, just chunking the ball and keeping it for that long, and they still get 34. I mean, that was one of the questions after the game, right? I was like, you guys only got 34, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, 34 is a lot.
This is interesting, though. This came up on the Zoom call yesterday. I don't remember who asked it. I wanted to think it might be Sam McDowell, but at some point, here's Patrick turning 25, and maybe he's still got that impulse to just, I got to throw downfield sometimes because I got to throw downfield. But he certainly basically curbed that in that game, and I think we maybe haven't understood, or maybe we've understood, but maybe not everybody's understood how really disciplined he actually is.
That's a balance that he has and will continue to, I don't want to say struggle with, but do you guys remember it was last year during training camp when we had kind of the sit down with Patrick, and he talked about a specific play against the Seahawks from the year before. And I want to say it was like a 3rd and 7 or something like that. and he either tried to run it or short pass, and he said, looking back at the tape, I think it was DeMarcus Robinson was open deep, and he maybe should have tried that. I just, sometimes the deep ball is the smart play. It's not just the aggressive play. Sometimes it's the smart play. So, it's going to go back and forth, like Steve mentioned. But I just wonder if I'm a defense, like I think I would approach the Chiefs the way that the Texans did. It used to be make them run the ball, but I don't know that that's that smart anymore. But I would want them to try to beat me with 13, 14 plays, in a drive rather than 2.
Yeah, he did sort of make this move to a fault on Thursday because he missed 2 deep balls, and he mentioned them specifically by the play to where they were easy to go back and look up, and he's absolutely right. In the first quarter, he's got a 3rd and 4 play. He sees that Darrell Williams is wide open on the flare, so he says, I'm just going to get the first down, and sure enough, he picks up the first down. But looking back at the tape, he's got Tyreek Hill one-on-one in the slot. This safety, he's got a single safety that kind of shades towards the other way, to where I think he's going to be too late to try and get back to Tyreek Hill. That's probably a touchdown. And then he's got Travis Kelce, no question, for a wide open touchdown. It was actually the snap before Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's touchdown. He's got Travis Kelce wide open on an out and up on the sideline. Instead, he checks down to DeMarcus Robinson. So he made all these adjustments in the offseason mentally to try and get himself to be acceptant of the check down. And I think twice maybe he pushed a little too far there.
What was the play, who was the intended target on the ball that he threw that Eric Murray almost picked off? It was an overthrow, and I just remember thinking at the time, Sam, you guys were at the stadium, and so I'm watching on TV, and I didn't just get a good perspective on who the intended receiver was. But there was a play, it was in the first half, where maybe it was an overthrow, maybe the receiver just ran the wrong route, but I just thought that was the kind of the closest point to danger that Mahomes had on Thursday night.
It looked like they were like, I can't remember who it was either, Blair, but I think as we were watching it, didn't we think it was like in the four guys converging on the scene with one? It was a very odd pass for Patrick, and I don't know if something went wrong along the way, that there was a miscommunication, but it almost broke up his streak of never throwing a September interception.
Yeah, look, when something goes wrong for Patrick, I just assume it's the other guy,
Right.
not Patrick. So, hey, we spent a lot of time after the game talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he was terrific. But I wanted to – I don't know what else we can say about him in that game, but I do want to bring this up. I want to say his final stats were 25 attempts for 138 yards. Does that sound about right? I don't have the stats in front of me.
That's correct.
Okay, well,
Yep.
let's talk about the 25 attempts, including several in the in the second half and in the fourth quarter when the game was a bit out of reach. Should the Chiefs, I don't know, on second thought, and a rookie running back, a guy that size, is there a case to be made that maybe you don't want Edwards-Helaire going 25 times in a game in a 16-game NFL season? I know we played 15 last year for LSU, but is that? Let's go with you, Herbie. Is that something maybe that we might see change as we go forward?
I don't believe so. And Andy Reid, Andy Reid is known, if you have the hot hand, you ride it. And I think it was just a fantastic matchup for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You got to remember, the Texans finished last year ranked 25th against the run. So they already were a suspect run defense. I don't think they did anything major during the offseason to upgrade on that side of the ball to improve their run defense. So this was a perfect matchup for him. And, when you play cover 2, you got to be able to play underneath as well. And clearly they weren't able to do that. This week against the Chargers, I think it's another good matchup for him. The Chargers allowed the Bengals to run for 122 yards, and Joe Burrow scampered for a touchdown. So you got back-to-back good matchups for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You've got Andy Reid, who's the master technician in game planning for the opponent and attacking the opponent's weaknesses. So this is another game that sets up for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The thing that was interesting to me with the 138 yards rushing, we know that Edwards-Helaire is a good receiver out of the backfield and only had 2 targets. So wait till we see him involved completely in the offense when they get him involved in the receiving game as well. He's just a fantastic weapon.
Okay. Hey, a couple of housekeeping items. progress of Juan Thornhill. Played 38 of, I think it was 58 defensive? I can't remember what the defensive snaps were.
59.
59. Okay. What did we hear about Juan Thornhill's progress this week?
I know McDowell wrote about him, so go ahead and take it, Mac.
Go ahead, Mac.
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the plan to sort of ramp him up. You know, last year he played at least, I think it was 83% of the snaps in every game until, of course, week 17 when he got hurt and left. But so, Vahe, did you have something?
I think I made myself clear.
This is but getting back to Thornhill, it's just part of the plan. He's going to be playing more, I think, every week. And Herbie mentioned it in training camp that they were ramping him up, just trying to get him back with the ones. And this is part of the same thing. For what it's worth, he did check out well after the game, said he felt great, according to Andy Reid, and also wanted to play more in the game. So I think he feels good. Okay.
Another item. Did you guys notice where Shea Patterson, former Chiefs quarterback, or who was in camp this year, what contract he signed? Did anybody notice that this week? Signed with the Baltimore Ravens. So that tends to happen, does it not? I don't imagine. Yeah, I don't think Shea will be with the Ravens much beyond about 2 weeks.
Tuesday morning. Yeah.
He'll run the scout team.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a second. A little gamesmanship by the Ravens. I guess, Melly, you've been covering the Chiefs longer than anybody here. I don't remember Andy Reid doing that, but it's not bad form, is it, to sign a player to at least to get a little bit of knowledge of the playbook?
I love it. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's one of these like just subtle, this is what we're going to do. I feel like maybe I'm just making this up because it fits the profile, but I feel like that's a Patriots move too, for them to bring somebody in like that. Yeah, I dig it. But I mean, the thing is, and look, like John Harbaugh is a brilliant coach and all that stuff. But like what I keep coming back to is, I feel like the Chiefs are at this place where I don't want to get like hyperbolic here, but you can know the play, but it doesn't mean you can defend it. You know what I mean? Like in basketball, you can know the pick and roll's coming, but there's certain options that come open depending on how you defend it. And I feel like the Chiefs are in a spot like that. I mean, I happen to just be watching, one of these seasons, I think it was the America's game, sort of documentary on the Chiefs last season. You remember that play? I think it was the Texans playoff game where, Kelsey makes a catch and he comes to the sideline. He's like, how the hell did you know that I was going to do that? I didn't know I was going to do that. And I turned around and, he basically like did some move off script of the play that he'd never done before, even in practice. And Mahomes knew he was going to do it and he put the ball right there. I just think about that stuff, that I'm not saying the Chiefs are never going to have a bad game or whatever. But I guess my point here is this is not like, I feel like the Rams, after their Super Bowl run, when it was like a lot of scheme and play design, some people studied and some people figured that out, of ways to get to Jared Goff and confuse him a little bit. But with this group, I feel like they are on such solid ground, even before they picked up Edwards-Helaire, and before, Assembly potentially, improves that offensive line. We're really hard to defend, and now they just have so many options. You can take away A, B, and C, but D can kill you. It's just that's what I keep going back to. I mean, God bless Shea Patterson, and he'll prove his value or whatever with the Ravens, but I just feel like you can know what's coming and still not be able to stop it.
Yeah.
Hey, Blair, can I just chime in real quick on that? One of the things that's really interesting about what Sam said, it's like you add up the inventory and the way they can improv off the inventory, right? But also within that, I do think Andy is probably known for being unpredictable or less predictable maybe than a lot of his peers. And I don't know how to measure the predictability thing. Like probably the only way to measure it is to get this dog to be quiet. Hey. But I the way you would ask the question would be, how often are other coaches really thrown off and really don't understand what's coming from the other guy? And I don't know how you'd really measure that, but I suspect Andy Reid would be near the top of the list on that to begin with, no matter what Shea Patterson's able to get across to the Ravens.
Here's the interesting thing to me. Obviously, Harbaugh comes from the Andy Reid tree, so he spent some time under Andy Reid. So it's fascinating to me that he is going to bring in a player when he should already be familiar with the scheme. He's already faced Andy Reid a couple of times on his career, but hey, it's like you said, Blair. It's all gamemanship. It happens all the time around the NFL. It's not just exclusive to the Ravens. Patriots are known to do it. Sean Payton down in New Orleans. Sorry, Sam, I had to mention it. Sean Payton down in New Orleans is known to do it as well. Hey, you bring these guys in because NFL players, when they're cut from a team, it's not like the military where they're signing a non-disclosure statement. You can't, if you had a secret clearance, you can't talk about what you learned. So the players obviously share that stuff as well.
One other thing about John Harbaugh too that I appreciate is, do you remember last year when they played that game and he went for every fourth down that he could get his hands on and went for 2 and all those things. And I appreciate a guy like that kind of changing, being able to adapt and follow the numbers a little bit. I know I'm a data guy, but being able to trust in that and try to give yourself any edge specific to that opponent you're trying to beat. Now, I still think that the Ravens, especially like how they're built, should run the ball a hell of a lot more. I think that's a good way to get some yards against this Chiefs defense. But so I guess we'll see about that. I like how this is, we have such great respect for the Chargers. We're already breaking down the Chiefs Ravens right now. But I guess that's where we're
games ahead, man. Just one game at a time with this group.
Yeah. Look, hey, we'll look forward to the challenge of the Chargers here in a moment.
Yeah.
Tom Banana wants to know, good question. I think we dealt with it a little bit after the game, but why did Willie Gay not play more? Is it just do we speculate that it's just a matter of him picking up the defense and a little bit of a more of a complicated position than say a cornerback? What do you think, Herbie?
It's going to be a matter of time. I mean, this is a point that we've hammered home since training camp. So it was no surprise that Ben Niemann is starting. You always got to go back to last year. What took this Chiefs defense all that time to really grasp what Steve Spagnuolo wants to do? And it didn't happen until midway through the season, and everyone said, hey, it's a new scheme. Keep in mind that Gay did not have the benefit of the rookie minicamp, OTAs, or the mandatory minicamp before training camp. So that's a lot of lost repetitions. It makes perfect sense to bring him in slowly. Special teams is known for making players think fast and react and, instinctual play. And that's going to help him transition to whenever they decide, hey, let's get him in on defense.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, guys, time to play a little candy corn here. We've got, but we'll start with a question from Henry Ortman. Do you guys ever go out and have a couple of beers together just for the fun of it? A couple?
No, never.
Absolutely not a couple. It's never.
Or we sat around in the Airbnb hub and, during Super Bowl week and drank it all there at the table.
Yeah, so Henry, we do. Thanks for asking. That was fun. So let's 3 things. We're going to look ahead to the game in LA and the atmosphere, what we expect the atmosphere to be. Besides smoky in LA, but we'll start with this. So Sam Mellinger has a story on the Star's website that about the Chiefs offense and Patrick Mahomes, and as we discussed earlier, basically not needing the big arm of Patrick Mahomes for this offense to succeed, and he got into the story by professing his love for chicken McNuggets. And I, after reading it, I concluded that I don't think I love anything as much as Sam Mellinger loved chicken McNuggets as a youth and perhaps young adult. So it got me thinking. Let's do some fast food favorites here. All of us have been sports writers for longer than we want to count. All of us have been on the road on the highways and byways of the Midwest and having to stop at fast food places, and I imagine we have collected our favorites. There are places that we will and won't stop, and so Sam McDowell, let's start with you. Fast food favorites. Do you love anything as much as Melly loves his McNuggets?
Probably not. I did wonder how long Sam has been trying to sneak that into the lead of an article. And yesterday he was like, all right, today's the day. My number one is probably Zaxby's. I discovered it in South Carolina when I lived out there. Great wings, boneless wings. They actually opened in Kansas City like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but nothing within like half an hour of my house. In fact, if somebody out there is a franchisee watching, because I know we have viewers from everywhere, wants to open one in Eastern Jackson County, like I will single-handedly probably keep them profitable. And beyond that, anytime my wife says, I don't care where we eat, she knows that I've got something in mind every single time. So it's sort of luring out there that we're going to Zaxby's then.
I thought it was interesting that Zaxby's came to Missouri when the Tigers got into the SEC. I don't think that was a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I know where they all are in Missouri. Yeah, I know exactly where the ones in Columbia are and the ones here in Kansas City.
Okay. Bit of an upset pick, Zaxby's. All right, Vahe, what do you think?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. One is just the utilitarian value of exit 103 McDonald's on I-70 on your way. I think it's exit 103, and it's usually the two cheeseburger fries combo. That's just kind of the one you can keep driving very easily. I would prefer the Wendy's burger, but they're not as available. But really, the best thing I could ever get at a fast food place is the Jamocha Shake at Arby's, exit 101, I think, on I-70. I have seldom done the 103, 101 double stop, but as I'm talking about it now, it seems kind of tempting.
Are you telling us where a McDonald's is located? Because they are everywhere. Like
Well, it is true that there's like 7 of them on I-70, and sometimes there's that one. I don't know if that's Concordia 48 or 49 or 58. There's a couple right there. Anyway, that's a little of the layout. But I don't know if you guys are like this, but I seldom will eat it unless it's on the road for work.
Right.
It's not too often that happens.
You just totally set that up like it was some mom and pop place. Like this exit 101, included behind here, this place called McDonald's.
I just wanted to bring the audience along with the trip itself.
With the drama. All right, Herbie, what you got? Oh, I can't wait for this.
Oh, I am the connoisseur of fast food. I will tell you this: my 3 favorites. When I was, I'm going back to my first career. When I was based out of Fort Bliss in Texas, Whataburger, obviously in Texas, is huge. But Whataburger actually delivered. So you could sit there in the barracks and order your big giant cheeseburgers and be good. Never have to leave. Indianapolis, forget St. Elmo. White Castle, baby. I will eat White Castle the whole week while we're up there at the Combine. And then in the South, Crystal. Those Crystal Pups, oh, man, yeah. I'm the guy that orders IHOP through DoorDash. So if you want fast food, you talk to me.
We went there.
Look at the stunned silence from these guys.
We just didn't think that public. Yeah.
Is there a number 2, Melly, for you?
Well, oddly enough, I was about to, for the first time in this show's history, completely co-sign all of Herbie's takes until he went to IHOP. But before that, he was lights out. The Chicken McNuggets thing followed me longer in life than it probably should have. Like I think I was well into college before I got off of the Chicken McNugget. And I think the one that has stuck with me the most is Taco John's. Oh, yeah. I will fight somebody over Taco John's. I usually get there's a 15-cent difference between if you get the 2 taco meal and a Taco Bravo, or the Taco Bravo and 2 tacos. And I can't remember which one. I do the math every time I go there just to save the 15 cents. It's basically like people who grew up in Johnson County love Taco Villa. Like that's their thing. People grew up in the Northland. It's in a tub, which is fantastic, by the way. But I grew up in Lawrence, so it's Taco John's. And also, I know we're trying to stay positive, but I would rather starve than eat Subway.
True that. I did go through a Subway phase about 10 years ago, but no more. Vahe's Rand McNally conversation got me thinking that, think about leaving Kansas City in any direction. I know where all of them are, right? The Boonville stops that Vahe mentioned. If you're going west toward Manhattan, If you don't stop at the McDonald's rest area outside of Lawrence or the one outside of Topeka, I think that's a Hardee's. You just know where they are going north on 29 or 35. I know Cameron exit off of 35 and Mound City off of 29. Sometimes it's not what your favorite is, it's what's available. And
That's right.
sadly for me, the Wendy's spicy chicken sandwich not available in many of those directions.
Is that right? The number 11 or the regular?
I don't order it by the number, so I just go in spicy chicken sandwich, cheese, lettuce, pickle, tomato.
Okay.
Hold the mayo.
There's one that has jalapeno and bacon and this like spicy.
That's a
Oh,
fantastic sandwich.
it's so good.
Fantastic sandwich.
It's so good.
And listen, I have succumbed to the Popeyes chicken sandwich craze. I think that is a fantastic sandwich, and it's there's one over in Olathe that I can get to, have been to, I should say. So, all right. Well, thank goodness we got that topic covered. All right, let's
Cover the hell out of it, by the way.
Might have to be a part 2 in the coming week. So Vahe and I are heading to LA for Chiefs Chargers, and Vahe, we are going to see some smoky air, breathe some smoky air. You can actually see haze in this part of the country from the forest fires, not only in California but Oregon and Washington. But we're also going to see an empty stadium, and I'm wondering, before we just break down the game and give some predictions, what do you think how's it gonna feel? What do you think? I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing a new stadium, that SoFi Stadium, but empty. It's just gonna be weird.
I think the sound of it is what I'm anticipating being the strangest, right? And I'm assuming the way the stadium's set up, that sounds like a funny way to put it, but it'll be an open air press box within the stadium, right? It won't be like Arrowhead where you're inside. So I'm just curious about the sort of echo chamber of sorts that it might be. And I know we'll have stuff piped in. I don't know how it'll sound at the stadium, though. I wonder also, though, what we'll see about how it affects how they communicate on the field, right? I mean, that's going to be kind of the funniest thing. You get this feeling like they really think their voices are going to be overheard. And I assume they'll do everything they can to prevent that. But I just think it's going to be funny having this backdrop, a vast place with nobody in it.
Really is. And we saw that on Sunday night? Was that the Sunday night game, the Rams that opened the stadium against the Cowboys? Sam McDowell, 8.5 is the line. Big number for a road team as a favorite. Do you like that? Is that about where it should be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bettors sort of dictate where the line ends up, and right now it seems like about 55% of the bets are on the Chiefs. So yeah, I think that number makes sense. Okay.
All right, Herbie, break it down a little bit. Where can the Chiefs listen? I'll say this about the Chargers. Got by Cincinnati on the road in week 1, although I don't know what on the road means this year. I just don't know what big advantage or disadvantage it is. But in 2 games against the Chiefs last year, the Chargers outgained the Chiefs. There were more than 100 total yards in the Mexico City game, and outgained them at Arrowhead as well. Chiefs ended up winning both of them, of course, because they always beat the Chargers. But new quarterback, first time without Chiefs won't be seeing Phillip Rivers in quite a while. How do you think this game unfolds, Herbie?
I think you're going to see a different type of Chargers offense. I mean, you look at the game last week, Tyrod Taylor only averaged 6.9 yards per pass attempt. And then you have to remember Melvin Gordon's gone. So now you've got Austin Eckler, who remains dangerous, but you no longer have to worry about a dual combination in that backfield. The Chiefs own the Chargers. In the past 12 games, they're 11-1. I don't think this is going to change any differently here. When you look at what the Bengals were able to do, I mentioned 122 yards rushing against the Chargers defense, and Joey Bosa didn't practice yesterday because of a triceps injury, so he's an injury to watch. This sets up for another Chiefs win, in my opinion.
Okay. Hey, Melly, so what do you think? Bottom line for us, Chiefs win this one by a couple scores?
I would think so. I think they're the better team in most ways that you can be the better team. Herbie just mentioned a big thing to watch is that Bosa injury. I'm kind of bummed about Derwin James still. I know it's been a while, but that guy, I'm just looking forward to watching that sort of matchup, Derwin James against this offense, for years to come. Kind of bummed that we're not going to see it on Sunday, but unless, Bosa and Ingram, they got some guys up front, but unless they just wreck Mahomes and hit him into oblivion, it's hard to see a way that the Chargers are going to win this.
Okay. I've got it kind of right at the line, but we'll see. Okay, listen, we've gabbed on longer than we usually do, but I enjoyed the conversation with all of you. A couple of programming notes. If you want to hear this again, it'll be the SportsBeat KC podcast this afternoon. Tomorrow, Mellinger Minutes for Your Ears is dropping. Always pay attention to that and follow the coverage by all these guys in the print editions of the Kansas City Star and on kansascity.com. Big thanks to Monty Davis and Chris Oshner for putting the show together today in Beth Welsh's absence. So, all right, guys, we will do it again after the game somehow. We'll figure it out when we get out there, but we're going to do it after the game on Sunday, and look forward to talking to you then. Thanks, everybody. All right.
Oh, let me end this broadcast.
Hey, yeah.